They say every kingdom is built on blood, but in this one, the blood never stopped. For centuries, kings and queens have vanished, drained, devoured, while the throne remains unbroken, eternal. Not a legend, not a metaphor, but real streams of crimson dripping from the cold black stone as if the seat of power were alive. Tonight we open the Forgotten Chronicles and step into the cursed hall where the crown was never the true ruler. The Bleeding Throne was. This is a terrifying new series. I'll be taking you through the darkest depths of history and lore to uncover the truth behind some of the most terrifying legends ever told. And this is just the beginning. Make sure you stay tuned for more. It was 124 years before another soul dared sit on the Iron Throne. By then, it had become a thing of legend, a relic of a bygone age. It was uncovered during a dig, unearthed in the courtyard of a ruined palace, overgrown with ivy and smelling of decay. Found by a farmer who was plowing a field to plant the spring barley. Superstitious whispers spread like wildfire as soon as the news broke. Some said the throne should be destroyed, that its curse had claimed one king and would claim many more. Others said it must be reclaimed, that only a true leader, one worthy of the legends, could hope to survive its judgment. And so it was brought back to the castle, placed in the center of the courtyard where all could see. Then came the visitors, noblemen and women, dukes and duchesses, lords and ladies, all eager to test their mettle against the relic of old. Most of them laughed, clapping loudly as crimson splatters stained their silks, and they scrambled away from the throne. A few of them screamed, falling to their knees and begging for mercy as the basalt drank in their life essence. Only one remained. His name was Gareth, and he was no prince, no son of nobility. He was a farm boy, strong and quick-witted, the son of the man who had found the throne. He approached it slowly, fear etched on his young face, and yet he did not run. When he was close enough, he reached out a hand, hesitant at first, then bold, and touched the cold surface of the throne. It did not bleed. At first, his eyes wide with disbelief, he sat down. The stone pulsed beneath him, thrumming like a living thing. Then a single drop appeared, not of blood, but of moonlight. Night had fallen by then, and the sliver of moon peeked through the clouds directly above the throne. That drop turned into 2, then 3, and soon Gareth was surrounded by a soft white glow. He remained seated, unmoving, until dawn broke over the horizon, chasing away the darkness. As the sky grew light, the glow faded, and when the sun crested over the hills, the throne was once more stained with blood. So the legend continued, a tale told by bards and minstrels, by traveling salesmen and gossiping housewives. Kings stayed far away, for who would risk the wrath of a cursed throne? And so Gareth ruled. He knew nothing of strategy, nothing of courtly intrigue, but he was young, and the throne chose him, made him strong and fierce, keen of mind and sharp of tongue. He led rebellions against marauders, negotiated treaties with neighboring lords, and even managed to expand his territory. Still, no one knew why the throne had picked him, a farm boy who had never commanded more than a team of oxen. Gareth never asked. He felt no need to question the will of the stone. He knew, as all who sit upon the basalt eventually learn, that the hunger of the throne can be appeased. Might and cruelty do not break it, nor does mere kindness sway it. It chooses those it wants, takes what it wants, demands what it wants. Sometimes, just sometimes, it rewards those who show it respect. Gareth died almost 60 years later, after surviving an assassination attempt by a jealous lord. The throne was his heir, but it chose a queen for the first time in its history. Her name was Isolde, and she was beautiful. The chroniclers called her Isolde the Golden, though no gold touched the diadem she wore atop her raven hair. Her beauty was legendary, and so was her cruelty. She delighted in the suffering of others, reveling in their tears as much as their blood, and the throne seemed to delight in her as well, for it never bled while she sat upon it. Sometimes it pulsed warmly beneath her touch, sometimes it glowed with an inner light. Yet despite its favor, Isolde grew bored. She chafed at the borders set for her by the throne, by the laws of men and decency. She looked out over her lands and saw only subjects, not treasures to be hoarded, not jewels to be strung together in her crown. She wanted more, and the throne wanted more too. So it drank. not of blood, but of moonlight, each drop draining the life from the land, leaving behind blighted fields and silent homes. Her people suffered, yet Isolde and the throne were sated. But there comes a time when even a basalt heart grows weary of feasting on moonlight. And so it chose a third ruler, a man named Rorik, known throughout the land as Rorik the Wolf, a ruthless conqueror who cared little for lands of his own, but who delighted in the destruction of others. Wherever he went, death followed, and the throne welcomed him with rivers of red. For 200 years, the legends tell us, Rorik rode forth, claiming dominion over all he surveyed, taking what he wanted and leaving naught but ruin in his wake. The throne was sated by then, content to pulse softly and glow warmly as Rorik slept beside it at night, dreaming dreams of conquest. Yet even basalt wearies of bloodshed, even iron grows tired of rust. After Rorik died, the throne sat empty for 150 years, waiting, watching, until a princess wandered into the courtyard where it lay forgotten. Her name was Lyanna, and she was unlike any other princess in the kingdom. She did not care for finery, for jewels, for silks, and least of all did she care for power. She preferred instead to wander the wilds outside the castle walls, to hunt and fish and explore, living as freely as the birds in the sky and the fish in the stream. One day she stumbled upon the throne, and seeing no blood upon it, touched it tentatively, then sat down. The moment her skin met the cold stone, the bleeding began. It was not violent at first, only a thin trickle of red. But then Lyanna laughed, throwing her head back and letting the sweet music of freedom ring across the land. And as she laughed, the throne drank, not of her life force, no, but of her joy. The pact was made then, princess in basalt, as old as time and as enduring as the mountains. And so it continues still, though most folk have forgotten the legends. The stories whispered around hearth fires on nights when the wind moans and the shadows grow long. Every kingdom is built on blood, they say, but in this one, the throne itself bleeds. Do you ever feel like your life is just a series of unfortunate events? It's like everything you touch turns to garbage, and your dreams are made of cheap toilet paper? Well, if so, take heart. Your story can turn around because now you've been cursed by a magical stone. No, seriously, this curse is deadly. It all started long ago when a powerful sorcerer placed a curse on the kingdom. The only way to break the curse is to destroy the source of the curse, the Black Throne. But the Black Throne is indestructible, so you're basically screwed. Unless you want to rule the kingdom, then you have no choice. You must sit on the throne and become the new king or queen. But once you do, the curse transfers to you, and you become the new vessel of doom.
8.
Oh, and by the way, the throne feeds on your life force and enjoys nothing more than watching you slowly bleed out in front of it. Sounds fun, right? Well, from that night on, the curse was undeniable. Each new king or queen who took the throne felt the same moment. The first sitting, the first drop of blood. The first shiver of dread that crawled up their spine as they realized the stone was alive, and yet none could abandon it. The throne had become a symbol of legitimacy. To refuse it was to admit weakness. To destroy it was impossible. The throne endured, unbroken, and with each new reign, it demanded its due. At first, they tried to ignore it, to pretend the wet stain on their robes was nothing but imagination. But how can you pretend when the stench of iron fills the throne room and the court? When the king's counselors are caked in blood and the queen's ladies in waiting faint dead away? After all, this is not just any blood. This is the blood of kings and queens. As soon as the first drop falls, it's game on. The stone hungers for the life essence of royalty, and it will not rest until it has drained them completely. So naturally, some kings tried to fight back. Priests tried to cleanse it with holy water. Monks spent entire lifetimes chanting prayers before it. One desperate queen even ordered it buried beneath the palace floor. But by dawn, it had returned to the throne room, sitting exactly where it had always been, as if it had never moved. Those who carried it underground were found dead, their faces frozen in terror, their eyes wide and red as if they had drowned in their own blood. Still, the kingdom persisted. Wars came and went, dynasties rose and fell. But always the throne remained, and with every new ruler, the chronicles added another account of the bleeding. Some kings succeeded in ignoring the throne's demands, ruling wisely and keeping the peace for many years. They lived fast lives, throwing themselves into their work and the pleasures of the court. Having children who inherited their vigor, perhaps they bargained with the devil and bought their time, or perhaps the throne simply decided to be patient. But eventually, inevitably, they all paid the price. Even the bravest warrior, the most cunning diplomat, the wisest sage, and the most beloved ruler, all ended up cowering in front of the stone, offering what little life they had left. And then there are the fools. Oh, there are plenty of those. Kings who thought they could appease the stone, sacrificing animals or worse, before every council meeting, filling the throne room with the stench of death, and yet still it was never enough. The stone drank and drank and drank, but maybe there is hope. Maybe the prophecy is true. Those who read the old book speak of a time when the throne will be filled for the last time, when it has taken its last blood and the kingdom falls into silence. No heir will remain, no crown will shine. The stone will return to the earth that bore it, blackened and full. Of course, until that day comes, the people suffer. Every new king or queen, every noble who enters the throne room knows what awaits them. They watch as the stone pulses, as a single drop of blood forms at its peak, then falls. And so, whenever a new king rises, the people hold their breath. They do not cheer as others do in distant lands. They watch the black throne, and they wait for the first drop to fall, because they know it always does. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and share. Also, check out these other videos which are just a click away. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And now, back to the story. The centuries that followed King Aldamar's death were written in ink and fear. Every ruler who dared to ascend the basalt throne felt the same chill, saw the same crimson trickle. Some tried to laugh, dismissing it as superstition, but the longer they ruled, the darker their reign became. The blood was always there, sometimes only a drop, sometimes a stream running across the marble floor. And with each monarch, the legends grew. One chronicler, Brother Thane of the Grey Abbey, wrote in a secret diary discovered long after his death, "It is not the king who rules from the throne, but the throne that rules through the king." He described how King Edrin II had entered the hall on the day of his coronation, tall, proud, draped in white ermine. The moment he sat, the throne released such a torrent of blood that it splashed against his knees. The courtiers gasped, the queen mother fainted, and the priests began to chant desperately. But Edrin only smiled a wide, unholy smiles, if he had been waiting for it. That very night, he executed 3 of his closest advisors without trial. Within a year, his kingdom was drowning in executions, witch burnings, and wars of suspicion. Brother Thane's final entry reads, "The throne feeds on the cruelty it inspires. The more he kills, the stronger it grows, and the king no longer looks entirely human." The diary was hidden in the monastery walls, sealed with wax, and found 200 years later by a mason repairing the stones. When he read the words aloud, his tongue blackened, and he fell dead before his companions. They buried the book again, swearing never to speak of it, yet whispers endured. Others told of Queen Salira, the only woman in history who ever tried to defy the throne. When the blood seeped beneath her gown on the day of her coronation, she did not cry out, nor did she pretend not to notice. Instead, she rose from the stone, pointed at it, and declared before the court, "This is no gift of the gods. It is a wound that will not heal. I will not be ruled by a chair of death." That night she ordered the throne dragged to the deepest dungeon of the palace. The guards chained it with iron, buried it in salt, and set 50 men to watch it day and night. For 3 days, it remained still, silent. Then on the 4th night a guard screamed. They found him with his chest hollowed, his heart missing, his blood pooled around the chains. One by one, the other guards died, choked, drained, or simply vanished, leaving only crimson stains upon the stone floor. When dawn came, the throne was back in the great hall, untouched, as if it had never moved. Some say the throne chooses its victims, selecting the most ruthless, the most ambitious, and twisting them to its will, turning a king or queen into a puppet, a vessel for its dark purposes. Others say the throne is merely a mirror, reflecting the darkness that already resides in a ruler's heart, amplifying it, reveling in it. Whatever the truth, those who ascended the Iron Throne were never the same. Their minds cracked under the weight of their terrible legacy, their souls devoured by the very power they wielded. And so it was that the kings and queens of old met their end, not with honor and glory, but with madness and despair. Within the grand halls of the palace, there are secrets that linger, whispers that echo, and some truths are best left buried in the depths of time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this dark tale, please consider subscribing. If you have any chilling stories of your own, feel free to share them in the comments below. Your support would mean a lot to us. Until next time, may your nights be filled with pleasant dreams and your days with joy. The queen called Celera, the last of her bloodline, sat on the cold stone and screamed. Her voice echoed in the vast hall, bouncing off the high vaulted ceiling adorned with faded tapestries depicting her ancestors, the founders of the kingdom. Her eyes, once vibrant and proud, now stared sightlessly ahead, leering down at her from their lofty heights. Each king and queen had been prideful, powerful, ruthless, yet none had been able to escape the fate that awaited them all. Celera had tried again and again. She'd burned it, drowned it, even shattered the floor beneath it to drop it into the abyss. But always, the throne returned. The throne demanded blood, and she, like all before her, had failed to stop it. She flung herself up, knocking over a stool in her haste. It wasn't just her own blood that was spilled upon the stone. Every king and queen of her lineage had offered up their blood, their sweat, their tears, and what had it bought them? Madness and misery. The throne was a curse. She knew that now. Abandoning her palace, she fled into exile. Her name was erased from royal records, and her line ended in obscurity. The throne, however, endured, waiting for the next to sit upon it. There were times when the bleeding grew worse, when the throne seemed almost to hunger. During the great famine of the Black Winter, the people swore they saw rivulets of blood running down the palace steps. No coronation had occurred, yet the throne seemed to demand its due. Soon after, a plague struck, and the dead filled mass graves. The throne was blamed, but no one dared to challenge it. Even priests refused to enter the great hall at night, for they claimed they heard whispering voices echoing from the stone itself, growing louder and more insistent as the night wore on. Legends spread across borders. Foreign kings laughed at the tales of a bleeding throne until they visited in secret and saw it with their own eyes. One ambassador wrote in his private letters, "I would sooner kneel to the devil himself than sit upon that stone. It is no throne, it is an altar." His letter was smuggled home, but by the time it arrived, the ambassador had died mysteriously in his sleep. His pillow soaked with blood, though no wound was found. Still, the kingdom could not rid itself of its curse. For each generation, the throne awaited, and as the line of rulers grew weaker, more desperate, more paranoid, the people began to wonder. Perhaps the prophecy in the manuscript was true. Perhaps the throne would one day drink the last drop it required, and when it did, the crown, the kingdom, and all its history would vanish with it. But even that prophecy carried a darker clause, scribbled so faintly that only those who dared to press their faces close to the parchment could read it. When the stone has swallowed the blood of the one who made it, only then shall its hunger end. Till then, kings and queens are but vessels, emptied for its thirst. And so the question haunted every generation. Who was it that made the throne? Who carved the stone? Who gave it form? Who bound it to blood? The chronicles only hint at answers, but they speak of a secret pact, a shadowy figure, and a night when lightning struck the volcano where the basalt was born. The throne's story, it seemed, was far from over. For 7 generations, the stone held. It took the kings, but spared their heirs, keeping just enough blood to sustain itself until another monarch took the cursed throne. They came willingly, seeking power, glory, legacy. They left screaming, begging for death, only to be found the next morning, drained, lifeless, staring sightlessly at the ceiling. But then came Queen Isolde, the unbroken. She heard the stories, saw the stains, felt the echoes of anguish in the throne room. She knew what awaited her, yet she chose to sit. No fanfare, no ceremony, just the heavy silence of the watchers in the rafters and the rustle of her skirts as she lowered herself onto the throne. The watchers froze, expecting screams, but there was only silence, and a voice, soft, hard, demanding. "What is your name, mortal?" Startled, Isolde replied. "Isolde, my name is Isolde. Who would sit in my throne? Queen Isolde said, meeting the unseen gaze. A queen to rule in my right? Silence stretched. Then the voice rumbled like distant thunder. Very well, Queen Isolde. So be it. You have my permission to live, to rule, to hold the blood of the first kings. From that day, Isolde ruled with an iron fist, her gaze steady, her voice ringing through the halls. Those who plotted against her, fearing the whispers in her ear, met swift justice. Trade flourished, armies respected her, and children told stories of the brave queen who defied the whispers in the throne. But did Isolde defy the throne, or did she bargain with it? Did she break the curse, or become its prisoner? That night the throne's hunger was appeased, but its whispers did not cease. Every night it murmured, weaving tales of glory, whispering promises of immortality. And every night Isolde listened, her face pale, her eyes dark. Some say she was a pawn, some say she made the deadliest bargain in history. But the throne kept its secrets close, safe in the knowledge that Isolde, like all before her, would eventually yield. For how long can a mortal defy a god? Perhaps the real question is, was Isolde ever mortal? What do you think happened to Isolde? Let me know in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. As the moon waxed and waned over the Black Citadel, a new whisper took root among the common folk. It slithered through the city like a shadow, taking shape in the flickering candlelight of countless taverns and workshops. People spoke in hushed tones of a lurking evil, something ancient and insensate that stirred within the cold stone of the throne room. For generations that evil had lain dormant, but now it was awakening. It began subtly enough. At first it was just a feeling, a prickling unease that settled over the populace whenever the monarchs left their chambers. But soon those feelings took form. Commoners heard the throne speaking to their leaders, not in words. No, not in words. But in feelings, emotions that wormed their way into the hearts and minds of kings and queens, whispering hungers and thirsts, commanding obedience. At first, the monarchs resisted. King Alaric, the just held firm against the insidious voice that urged him to spill the blood of his kin. He clung to reason, to the oaths he had sworn, to the love of his people. He chose righteousness over the throne's dark whispers, and for that he was rewarded. His reign was long, his legacy unassailable. But that was before the whispers became commands. That was before the throne claimed him as its own. Queen Isolde, however, listened. Oh, how she listened. When the throne demanded tribute, she offered up maidens and young men in bloody sacrifices, giggling as the life drained from their veins. Her laughter echoed through the halls of the castle, as the throne grew stronger with each spilled drop of blood. And so it went. Some monarchs resisted the throne's whispers, their reigns cut short by madness, or war, or sudden illness. Those whose reigns lasted, whose names echoed through history, they listened to the throne. They fed it what it demanded, and in return it granted them power beyond measure. Power that made them gods over their people. But while the rulers grew ever more cruel, the people grew restless. They chafed under the yoke of endless tributes, the taking of lives that the throne deemed expendable. They whispered of rebellion, of deposing the monarchs and smashing the cursed throne to dust. In the dead of night, leaders would vanish. Their corpses found days later, drained of blood, devoid of life, left as pale husks to startle the populace. Those who survived learned to keep their heads down, their mouths shut, their ambitions buried deep within their chests. Yet still the whispers persisted. Still, the people dreamed of a world without the citadel, without the throne, without the ceaseless demands for blood and bone. Then one tale took root, spreading like a sickness through the populace. It told of a young prince, an heir who had been spared the machinations of the throne, untouched by the whispers that twisted and corrupted the minds of men. When the time came for his coronation, for him to sit upon the cold stone and embrace the whispers, he refused. On that day, as the crown was set upon his head, blood poured not from the stone, but from his own eyes and ears and mouth. The kingdom called it an accident, a freak occurrence, but it wasn't. The throne rejected its newest vessel, didn't want him. Hope flared, fragile and bright, in the hearts of the populace. If the throne rejected the prince, if it chose him as its enemy, then perhaps, just perhaps, they might stand a chance. Perhaps they, too, could reject it, defy it, destroy it. The idea bloomed in the shadows, gaining strength with every retelling. The whispers of rebellion grew louder, more insistent. Soon, it seemed as if the very stones of the city shared the people's anger, their desire for change. But as always, the throne had a way of silencing dissent. That night, the boy who would be king vanished from his chambers. His body found the following morning, drained of blood, a single crimson tear tracing a path down his ashen cheek. The throne had made its choice. It didn't want a king. It wanted only power, and so the cycle would begin anew. The people would whisper, and the throne would listen. As the centuries passed, the throne was no longer seen as a mere relic of kingship, but as the very heart of the kingdom's curse. It was said that the stone did not simply drink the blood of rulers, but stored it. Somewhere deep within its basalt body, the lives of hundreds of monarchs and thousands of sacrifices pulsed like a hidden ocean. Some swore that if one pressed their ear to the throne's surface, they could hear screams echoing inside, muffled, endless. Others whispered that if you touched it with bare skin, you could feel veins beneath the rock, pulsing faintly as though the stone were flesh. The most chilling account came from a court physician during the reign of King Duran III. The king had fallen ill, his body wasting away, though no disease could be identified. The physician, desperate, examined the throne itself, convinced it held the answer. What he wrote in his final letter is still read with dread. I cut my hand and let a drop fall upon the stone. It drank instantly, vanishing into the cracks. And then I heard a voice. It was not in the hall, nor in my ears, but inside my mind. It told me secrets I should not have known, of deaths yet to come, of betrayals still hidden. I fled, but I cannot flee the voice. It follows me even now, whispering. I fear it will never let me go. 3 days later, the physician was found hanged in his chamber, though his body was completely drained of blood. His skin was white as marble, his veins collapsed. But the throne's hunger did not stop with kings, queens, and advisors. Strange occurrences plagued the palace itself. Servants vanished in the night, their quarters discovered soaked in crimson, though no body remained. Courtiers who dared to speak against the ruler often fell suddenly ill, coughing blood until their lungs collapsed. Even animals were not spared. Horses in the royal stables were found slaughtered, their carcasses dry, emptied like wineskins. Priests claimed that the throne was stretching its reach, no longer content to wait for a coronation. It wanted more. By this time, the people no longer saw their monarchs as rulers, but as sacrifices walking willingly to the altar. At coronations, crowds gathered not to celebrate, but to witness the moment the stone claimed its due. Some fainted, others wept, and many swore that the drops of blood that fell from the throne never touched the ground but disappeared midair, drawn back into the stone. No one spoke of rebellion anymore. They did not fear their kings. They feared the throne. Generations turned to centuries, and still the bloody rites continued until one day a young woman stood before it. Elara, daughter of the deposed king. Her lineage traced back to the very first monarch who had yielded to the stone's demand. Her people called her the Blood Queen, not as a title of respect, but of fear. For when she ascended the throne, a crimson stain spread across her back, seeping into her bones. Every king since the first had worn that stain like a second skin, and every king had eventually yielded to the throne, had become its thrall. But Elara would not bend. She was no puppet to be controlled, no blood-soaked rag to be discarded. She would defy the throne, tear its bloody reign from the kingdom's history. And so she took her seat. All present gasped, expecting the worst. Instead, a hush fell over the crowd as the stone seemed to shudder. The crimson stain spreading across the queen's back, receding inch by agonizing inch. The throne pulsed, a low hum vibrating through the hall, and then silence. The queen sat pale but unharmed, the stone strangely still. Was this the end? Had the throne finally met its match? Or was this only the beginning of a far more sinister game? Now what do you think? Will the throne claim its new queen, or has it met its match? Let me know your thoughts. And yet, there were always a few who sought to master it. The most infamous was King Eric the Black, remembered in every tale as the one who embraced the throne's hunger. Unlike others who resisted or denied it, Eric offered himself willingly. On the night of his coronation, when the blood streamed across the basalt, he dipped his hands into it and smeared it across his face. He laughed, proclaiming himself not king but priest of the throne. His reign was a nightmare that lasted 22 years. He built temples to the throne, demanding sacrifices by the hundreds. His armies carried banners not of the crown, but of the black stone. The kingdom drowned in rivers of blood, and yet the throne seemed almost silent during his rule, as if appeased. It was only upon his death, found lifeless upon the seat, his body shriveled to a husk, that the blood returned, gushing as though to reclaim what it had lent him. After Eric, the throne was no longer mentioned openly in chronicles. The scribes were ordered to write of crowns, of laws, of wars, but never of the bleeding stone. It became a secret everyone knew, but no one dared to say aloud. Foreign visitors noticed the absence, noting in their journals, "They speak of everything but the throne," yet all eyes drift toward it, as though it were the true sovereign. Still some fragments survived. A monk named Calvros wrote that he had seen the throne bleed without anyone seated upon it, as if in anticipation. He described how the stone would tremble, how droplets would form like sweat upon its surface, rolling down the black arms. One night he swore he saw shapes in the blood faces, pressed against the surface of the stone, mouths open in silent screams. He wrote, "I know now it is not only drinking, it is holding them, all of them, the kings and queens, the innocents, the rebels, trapped forever inside.
Ow.
Their blood is not lost, it is imprisoned." This vision spread terror among the monks, and they tried to warn the court. But when dawn came, every monk of Calvros's abbey was found dead, their blood painting the floor in patterns no human hand could make. The throne sat untouched in the hall, silent, as though mocking them. And then came the night of lightning. Witnesses claimed that the sky split open, a storm unlike any in memory. Bolts of fire struck the palace roof, shaking the stones, while thunder shook the halls. Then, though no one sat upon it, the throne bled more fiercely than ever, rivers cascading down the steps, staining the marble red. Those who survived the night said the blood steamed as if alive. Then the flashes of lightning, they swore they saw the basalt shudder, breathing, waiting, almost awake. It was then that the prophecy began to spread once more, whispered from lips pale with fear. When the stone has swallowed the blood of the one who made it, only then shall its hunger end. But no one knew who that was, or if he or it still walked the earth. The throne's secret was still locked in shadow. A hush fell over the crowd as the last witness finished her tale. All eyes were drawn to the ancient throne in the center of the room, its black stone gleaming under the torchlight. It was a relic of a forgotten past, a symbol of a kingdom's demise. But amidst the hushed whispers and nervous glances, a single voice cut through the silence. Ilara, the young historian, stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. She had dedicated her life to uncovering the truth about the Crimson Throne, and she refused to let fear or superstition stand in her way. Ignoring the superstitious murmurs of the crowd, she approached the throne, her hand outstretched as if to touch it, then paused as if listening to a sound just beyond their hearing. Suddenly, her face paled, and she recoiled as if burned. "There is another," she whispered, her voice trembling, "another sacrifice." As she turned, a flicker of movement caught her eye. The shadows beneath the throne, something stirred, and for a moment, the flickering torchlight revealed a pair of glowing eyes staring back at her. Eyes filled with an ancient, otherworldly hunger. The old tales say that once upon a time there was a kingdom where the king's power was absolute. He owned everything his people owned. Every piece of metal, every horse, every woman, every child. They were his property, and he could do with them as he pleased. His word was law, and his justice was swift and brutal. You would be put to death without ever knowing why. But kingship is a heavy burden, and the weight of responsibility often steals a man's sleep. This king felt the burden keenly. So one night he left the kingdom and walked alone up the slopes of a nearby volcano, until he came to a cave filled with sulfur and shadow. There an old man waited and listened patiently as the king spoke of his woes. "You are troubled, O seeker," said the old man when the king had finished, "and I can help you. In exchange for this gift, I will give you a throne of obsidian that will give you power beyond your wildest dreams." And the king looked down at the man's outstretched hand and saw a ring of purest gold. Power, he thought, is a heavy burden. How wonderful to pass it on. He slipped the ring on, and the world fractured. In the final century of the throne's reign, the fear that had lived only in whispers finally burst into open dread. Kings no longer wanted the crown, yet none dared refuse. One prince who fled the kingdom was dragged back in chains, forced to sit upon the stone while priests prayed desperately. He lasted 3 days before blood poured from every pore of his skin, his body collapsing into the arms of courtiers who dared not speak. His name was struck from records, as though he had never existed. But the people remembered. They always remembered. It was during this time that a secret society arose within the palace, men and women who called themselves the Keepers of the First Stone. Their symbol was a hand pierced by a shard of obsidian, their oath sworn in blood. They claimed that the throne's curse could only be broken if the Maker himself was found and sacrificed upon it. But who was he? Was he a man, long dead? Or was he something else entirely, still walking unseen in the shadows of history? The Keepers searched everywhere: the volcano, the abbeys, the sealed vaults of the royal library. They're hidden in the dust of centuries. They found a clue. A page describing Aldemar's pact. A night of fire at the mountain's peak, and the cloaked figure with eyes of coal. The text said nothing of his name, only that he had given the throne in exchange for dominion over the living. Some among the keepers whispered that this figure still lingered, bound to the stone, feeding upon its offerings. Others claimed he was no man at all, but something older than kingdoms, older than mankind itself. The final king, Lusorin IV, was a boy of 16, gentle-hearted, frail, the last of his line. His coronation was not a day of celebration, but of mourning. The people crowded into the great hall silent, their eyes fixed upon the black throne. Lusorin approached, trembling, guided by priests who whispered prayers. When he sat, the hall fell into horror. The throne did not bleed in drops or streams. It erupted. Blood gushed like a fountain, drenching the boy, spilling across the marble, filling the hall ankle-deep. Courtiers screamed, slipping, fleeing. The priests chanted, but their voices drowned in the roar of liquid crimson. Lusorin cried out once, then went silent, his eyes wide, his lips moving as though answering a voice no one else could hear. For hours, the blood poured. When it finally stopped, the boy was gone. Only the throne remained, slick and steaming, its black surface shining as though it had feasted beyond measure. That night, lightning struck the volcano once more. In the morning, the palace was empty. Not abandoned, empty. The guards, the servants, the courtiers, even the priest, all gone, leaving behind only robes and armor stained with dried blood. The kingdom was silent. Villages awoke to find no messengers, no soldiers, no orders. The palace stood like a tomb, its windows dark, its halls echoing only with the drip of unseen water. They say that sometimes when the moon is full and the winds grow cold, you can still hear the echo of the first king's laughter ringing through the silent halls, or feel the tremor of unseen footsteps on the stairs. For the curse is never broken, only forgotten, and that which is forgotten is never truly gone. And they all came to a terrible end. There was no crowning of a king. There was no heir left. The line was broken, just as the prophecy foretold. When the throne has taken its last blood, the kingdom shall fall into silence. But the throne did not vanish. It sat in the great hall, waiting, black and eternal. Those few brave enough to enter swore it still gleamed wet, though no one had touched it for years. One explorer claimed he saw shadows move across its surface, faces of kings long dead pressing against the stone, begging to be released. Another said he heard a child's laughter echoing in the empty hall, though no child remained alive in the palace. The keepers of the first stone vanished too, their order collapsing into dust. Some say they succeeded in part, binding the Maker once more within the basalt. Others say they failed, and that the Maker still walks, searching for a way to reclaim his throne. Whatever the truth, the kingdom was abandoned. The palace stands to this day, crumbling, its windows shattered, its gates rusted. And yet the throne endures. No storm can topple it, no hammer can break it. Travelers who dare to approach claim they feel it watching, as though the stone itself were alive. And there are darker rumors still. Some say that on certain nights when the moon is red, the throne does not sit idle. They claim it bleeds again, though no king sits upon it. That the rivers of blood flow silently across the empty floor, vanishing before dawn. That those who linger too long feel a presence behind them, a hand upon their shoulder, a whisper in their ear. Sit, it is your turn. Perhaps the throne's hunger ended with the last king. Perhaps it waits for a new victim, a new pact. Or perhaps most terrifying of all, it has never stopped feeding. It simply waits, patient, eternal, until the moment comes when another foolish heart sits upon it once more. Now let me ask you this. What do you think? You think the throne is still hungry? You think the Maker still walks? Or has the prophecy truly ended? Has the kingdom fallen into silence? Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your theories. Leave them in the comments below, because even though the Makers are gone, you and I, we remain. We remain in this world where the stories still echo, where the stones still stand, and where the choice ultimately is ours. Will we heed the warnings of the past? Or will we make the same mistakes again? Only you can decide. But whatever you choose, remember this: the story of the bleeding throne is not over. Not while there are still those who seek power, not while there is darkness in the world, and not while there is good left to protect. So keep this tale in your heart, traveler, for it may come in handy on your journey. And when you look up at the stars, remember, the Makers may be gone, but their legacy lives on through us, through our choices, through our courage, through our willingness to face the darkness that lies within. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this grim and gritty tale. Remember, if you like these kinds of dark fantasy stories, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Also, don't forget to check out our other content, where we explore mythology, folklore, and everything in between. Thanks for watching. Keep an eye out for more content, and I'll see you next time.